Sriram, once again, welcome. Thank you so much for taking our time out, coming over, talking to the student community, talking to our people. I think it's been an honor to serve people like you. It's really been an honor. I haven't seen you face to face in a really long time now. Just to give you some context, there are a lot of people who will be there on the webinars, and there are a lot of people who will actually get to see you even during the YouTube videos and even the later shoots. So all of them are where you were a long time ago. They are clueless. There are a lot of times they have questions. There's a lot of uncertainty that they're looking at on their way, and this is our way to get that addressed. So my first question for you, Sriram, is what do you think? What suggestions do you have? So you went to a top 10 MBA program, right?
Yeah.
And you were very focused. You knew what you wanted in life. Did you know what you wanted in life back then when you started the MBA consulting process?
Yeah, vaguely. But yeah, I think it's still vague. But definitely over the years, I have gotten to know better of what I'm good at and what I want in life.
So my first question for you is, what suggestions do you have for people who will be applying in round one for the session starting in 2021? What do you think are some of the things that these applicants should be doing at this stage? What do you think are some of the things that they should get cracking on to maximize their chances of cracking a top program?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here and talk to you all. So at this stage, right, the first thing you should be doing is trying to get to know about yourself. By yourself, I mean you should find out what motivates you, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. That's the first step in this MBA journey, I would say. The second step is understanding what school you want to apply to, understanding more about the school, understanding the school culture, because every school in the US has its unique culture. And the schools here focus a lot on culture, unlike schools in India. So it's very important to understand the school's culture by either talking to people or attending the admission webinars that they have. I believe it's only virtual these days. So try to understand the culture, see where you fit in that school as a culture. A small example I can give you is the school I went to, Ross, has a very unique culture where it's more collaborative learning type. But if you go to other schools, you might not find that culture. The school I can think of right now is NYU Stern. Things are a bit competitive there and not collaborative like Ross. So on doing my research, I found out that Ross was the best fit. So do your research. That's the first thing. And the second is start looking at some of the questions these round one colleges ask for, and start kind of forming a brief idea in your mind. That's very important because you can't write these questions in a week or over a weekend. You need to write, rewrite again, get feedback from people, and I would say MBA journey personally for me was a path of self-discovery. I found a lot about myself, and also it got me a chance to talk to other people to understand what they think about me. So irrespective of whether you apply in round one or get through a college, the journey of going through the applications is definitely very helpful.
Sriram, you used to work in Maruti, right? And then you decided that you want to further move into operations and supply chain side of it. You came from an operations supply chain background and you chose to further move into it. You started and I think you had a long stint with Amazon as well. Can you focus a little bit on how did MBA have an impact on your your capabilities or things that you could manage in business? Give us a snapshot of that.
Yeah. So as Jatin said, pre-MBA, my career was in Maruti. So very heavily engineering focused, and I have an engineering degree too. So to give you an idea, whenever there was a problem, right, pre-MBA, to solve a problem, you need different ideas, different toolkits. And all the toolkits I had was very engineering related, very technical focused, right? Post-MBA, my entire thought process was broadened. I can think of a problem not only from my technical engineering side, but also from a people side, money side, business side, strategy side, right? So the biggest advantage you have, especially with the 2-year MBA program, is you completely come out with a different perspective on how to tackle the problem, and also learn to work with other intelligent, amazing folks. So end of the 2 years, if you look back, you'll have amazing new different perspectives, new ways to solve a problem. And that is what helped me the most. So to give you an example here, post-MBA, I work for Amazon. In Amazon, my job was a very leadership role. It involved managing a large team of people, and also making sure they are motivated, and at the same time running technical operations in the warehouse. Like, for example, if the line goes down, understanding why the line's going down, talking to engineers to get the line back up. So doing an MBA definitely gives you a lot more toolkit. I would say a lot more things in your toolkit to solve the problem, and that's what helped me the most.
Now, I've seen a lot of people looking at careers within supply chain operations, and I believe so. There are companies like UTC or Danaher or other automotive companies that have a very strong supply chain and operations dependability. And on the other side, there are more mature organizations of the new generation, like the Amazons of the world, the other e-commerce firms. Can you give us a description of what are the key roles that people start with when they start in companies such as Amazon, or even the operations related roles in other tech companies? What do you do for the first year, in the beginning of your career?
Yeah. So operations is a really wide area. It depends on which company you join, but broadly operations can be divided into two things. The first is operations doing for like pure tech companies like Facebook that have just a software product, and second is operations for tech enabled companies like Facebook and other things like Danaher, etc. So in a tech enabled company, you run your regular operations, but you are helped to do your operations with technology. For example, in Amazon, what Amazon does is basically ship items to you, right? In US, a lot of the portion of it is automated. It's done by robots. A small portion of it is done by humans. So if you join Amazon, and especially operations role, your job will be to manage both the productivity and uptime of those robots, and also manage the people managing those robots, and also managing the people working with the robots. Right, that's what you can expect in a tech-enabled company in operations. There are other roles in operations too, like pure business operations. For example, helping the company think about what they can focus on next, what product you can focus on next. That's the strategy side of it, and also how to efficiently run your business. So what we call here is the continuous improvement side of it. Those also come and fall under operations broadly. For a pure tech company that has only a software product like Facebook, the operations are slightly different. For example, in Facebook, I can talk about how people work in keeping the Facebook page operating, making sure there are no security vulnerable attacks on it. And the third piece is making sure the different people who develop app ecosystem on Facebook follow the different compliance policies Facebook has set. So that is the operations work being done on pure tech companies like that.
Now, when you started your first year at Ross, Sriram, did you also explore other career options, or were you only focused on operations? How was the experience of first year in terms of studying and networking and internship search? How was the entire experience of? I'm asking this question because a lot of people come to me and they ask about, I don't know much about goals and I don't know what is it that I want to do eventually. And I tell them that it's absolutely fine to be confused in a 2-year MBA program. See, guys, you can't afford to be confused in a 1-year MBA program, or maybe in a program like INSEAD where you have just 10 months to do everything, to do the entire heavy lifting. But 2 years is a time to experiment. Now, did you experiment? Did you try on other things? How did it go for you?
Yeah, absolutely. As Jatin said, 2-year program is a bit relaxed compared to the 1-year program, but definitely not very relaxed. You still have to start your job search right from day one. But the biggest advantage is you can do something else for internship, see if you like it. If you don't like it, find something else for full time, right? You have a lot more time to search for your job. Specifically, my experience in first year was very, very hectic. as I told you earlier, transitioning from an engineering background, thinking about things technically to thinking about things more broadly in terms of business took a while for me to adjust, but I'm glad I did. I put in the effort to adjust. Um, so the way Ross works is as soon as you join, you start your internship search right from day one. I was initially focusing on consulting, right? And any job search you want to do, you first have to network with the folks, try to understand what they do, and try to see if it matches. So during my job search in the first semester, I realized that consulting was not my forte. I wouldn't really enjoy being a consultant for various reasons. So I decided to pivot and then focus on operations. Luckily, I worked closely in Maruti with the operations team, and I had a lot of transferable skills that I could apply to the operations here in the US. And that is how I landed a job with Amazon. But I know a lot of friends who did an internship in operations at the end of first year, decided they didn't like operations and pivoted to something else. It's natural, it's possible. You just have to put in the amount of work. And also one more thing to consider is as internationals, it's kind of risky to keep changing path because you're tied to H-1B visa and all other stuff here. So that gives a little limitation. But at the end of the day, nothing is impossible. If you set your sights on what you want and put the right effort, you can definitely get it.
Now, here's an optional question for you. And I don't know whether you'll be in a position to respond to this or not. And if you have friends in Indian B schools, Sriram, how would you compare an MBA from India with an international MBA, such as one of the top schools in the US? If you were to draw a comparison in terms of your learning curve versus some of the other people you know, how would you rate it?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, personally, I would encourage people to embark on something challenging, right? And I feel doing an MBA abroad is more challenging than doing one in India. The reason is the first thing is culture. When you step out of your country, you go to a completely different culture. You might find it difficult to adjust to the culture first, but trust me, once you understand how those people work, why they think the way they think, it kind of clicks, something clicks in your mind and you start thinking much more broadly, which is what happened to me. I mean, I'm not saying doing an MBA in India is bad, but definitely if you want a very different, unique experience, if you want to broaden yourself, if you want to learn more things, I would say please look abroad. For example, I've searched for jobs in India and I've searched for jobs in the US. And searching for a job in the US is a completely different picture here. It's a completely different challenge. In India, like when I was hiring, a lot of companies depended on entrance examinations and your brand of the undergrad school you study in, and you get a job based on that. But in the US, it's completely different. You need to evaluate the culture of the company you're going to join, just like you evaluate the culture of the school you will join. And then try to see if that culture fits with you, and try to convince the hiring manager or the person who hires you to tell them why you think you'll be a good fit in the company, right? I never had to do all those in India, but I'm glad I came to the US and I had a chance to do all this. So I would say, look abroad. It need not be US. It could be Europe too. Like programs like INSEAD have a really good MBA program, and I'm guaranteeing you that doing an MBA abroad will make you better.
Now, do you want to give some examples of the major mistakes that you think applicants make when they apply to international schools? What are some of the most horrible mistakes people make that makes them a disaster story? What comes to your mind, Sriram?
Yeah, I think personally for me it was recommendation, right? We focus a lot of time on beefing our applications, but we don't focus much time on recommendation. I'll give you a brief idea on how things work in the US. So giving a recommendation, getting a recommendation is very common here in the US, and people have a lot of experience giving recommendations, which is not the case in India, right? Like when you go to a new job or when you apply to a college, have you guys gotten recommendations? I'm sure the answer is no. But even to apply to a school for undergrad here, people get recommendations, and there's a lot of weight given towards recommendations. So the first thing you need to do is try to understand or try to tell your recommender clearly what school you're applying to, what is the school expecting in terms of school culture, and ask them to think of stories that you have done in your past when you work with them that matches with the culture. That's very, very important. And if possible, if find a person who has studied in that school before. So what happens is sometimes if they've studied in the school, they can write better stories, try to find a better fit. So that's one place I would encourage you to focus on. Think about recommendations, think about it early, because the people who write recommendations for you need a lot of time to think about and write good ones.
A very valid point, and I'm glad you brought in recommendations, and I want to add to it, and this is very important for everyone who's watching this. Guys, a lot of you will come across situations where your boss will say, you know what, I don't have time to write a recommendation letter. Why don't you go and write something on your own? Why don't you just fill in the entire recommendation yourself? Don't do this. So when I started my career of MBA consulting a long time ago, I used to think a boss telling an applicant that go and write whatever you want yourself is a jackpot. Right? I had an amazing learning curve in realizing that, listen, I can look at a fake recommendation. I can look at a recommendation. I can tell you right now that, you know what, it's just fluff. It's not making sense. It's not something that a boss could have written. So even if you have bosses who don't yield to your request of writing recommendations ahead of time, there are other ways to look around. There are other ways to have your bosses, and you create that synergy to have a very, very strong application. But you writing the recommendation yourself is not going to do it. So I've sent a lot of people to top programs across the world, Ivy Leagues, top 10, 20, 30. I have not had people who created their recommendation in their own room, sitting when nobody was watching. Do you get it? I've had examples of people where they came back and they said, you know what, my boss is not even going to give me 1 minute. How can I have him write a 700-word recommendation letter, an elaborate recommendation letter? And I think, you know what, there are ways to address it. There are strategies to support your bosses as well in those things. But you writing it, it's not. The same as saying that you're standing on stage, speaking on behalf of your boss, thinking that everybody will think that you're your boss. You know what I mean? It's so easy to see through that. So don't do that. And there's one very valid point that Sriram brought up. So that trying, that opportunity of doing an experiment in a 2-year MBA. So I'll give a quick snippet of, I belong to a category of confused applicants. And I asked Sriram, the first question was that, did you know your goals completely? Did you follow them completely? And I personally belong to a category where I knew what I was writing. I knew that I would find a way to maximize my chances of cracking one of the top schools in the world. But I knew one thing, that, when I'm in, I will explore alternative careers. I will start window shopping and I'll start looking for a lot of other things. If you belong to that category, a 2-year MBA would probably make more sense for you. Right? What do you think, Sriram? Did you have people around at Ross while you were studying where you thought it could have been a disaster had they been in a 10-month MBA program?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people, like MBA is a place where the college itself encourages you to experiment. It has a lot of forums and things you can join to find out what the thing does. For example, I was experimenting getting into finance, especially into private wealth management. So what it means is people here have a lot of money, and they can give the money to you and you can invest it to get them returns. So I was doing some experimentation on that. So 2-year program, definitely you need to experiment, right? Otherwise it's a waste of 2 years, I would say. So think about how concrete your goals in your life are. If you know exactly what you want to do, if you're motivated by that, if you're passionate by that, go for a 10-month. If you're not, then I would highly encourage 2 years.
Awesome. Now, is there anything that you would like to address, Sriram? You said that your current job. There are a lot of amazing things, interesting things that you're doing right now. And MBA is giving you a chance to. And while you do that, I'll also give an option to people as well to start thinking of the questions that you may have for Sriram. So whatever comes to your mind in terms of round one, round two, recommendations, resume, anything that you have in mind, start typing those questions. And I'll be the voice of your questions for Sriram. But anything you want to add to this, Sriram, based on your current job after Amazon? Why did you move out of Amazon, and what are the interesting things that are you doing right now? We would love to hear that.
Yeah. So Amazon gave a very fulfilling career, but I got married and I had a kid and my priorities changed and I couldn't devote so many hours in a day at Amazon. So I decided to look at a different place, and I was able to leverage my operation skills I learned and MBA strategy skills I learned in MBA to find a job in operation strategy. I right now work for a startup here that makes driverless cars. It's called Cruise. We have a product here. It runs in San Francisco. We are still in the testing phase. And what I do for them is I work on the business side of it. I work in trying to make a business out of the product. So traditionally, if you see car manufacturers, they try to sell the cars, right? Like Maruti, Ford, Tesla. They try to sell the cars to auto manufacturers or to consumers. What we're trying to do here is to create a fleet business, because manufacturing a driverless car is very, very, very expensive. We can't afford to sell it to people. So we're trying to take a different route and trying to create a taxi business, a fleet business around it. And I work specially on the operation side of it, right? How do we manage such a complex operations? Even in San Francisco alone, you'll have more than 1,000 cars running on the road all the time, meeting customer demand. How do we manage the operations technically? Like, how do you ensure that the car is running on the road all the time? And the business here is very similar to airline industry, right? When an aircraft is down, it's downtime. It's hurting the company. It's similar for our business. We have expensive assets that need to keep running all the time. And my job is to find ways to keep them running, anticipate the issues, and find a way to mitigate risks.
Got it. All right. Perfect. Now we have questions coming in. My first question is from Dipankar. Dipankar says, and this is a question for you, Sriram. What is Ross's advantage? What is the USP of the program?
So the easy answer is it depends on what you want out of it, right? Ross tries to create a good platform where people can come in, network, find out really what they want, and then go pursue it. And the example I can give you is the different clubs that Ross has and how it actively promotes it. So apart from that, I'm sure, I hope you know what exactly you want in life, but apart from that, a few things Ross does to help you is the MAP program. I'm sure you've heard. It's like an experiential consulting project you do at the end of first year, which is really good, especially for people like me who have never worked in the US before. It gives a great experience of what corporates value and how they generally work here, and how you can work as a team with them to solve problems. And the second is, I felt it gave a lot of good support to internationals, especially the career office was run by, I forgot his name, but he gave a lot of support. He was an international himself, so he has gone through all the troubles we go through, and he was able to guide us and coach us on how best to approach the job strategy in the US. That felt I was good.
Awesome. Now, next question for you is, and it's again from Dipankar. He says, Ross has comparatively shorter essays and more precise essays than most of the other schools. What, in your opinion, does that tell about Ross? What does that tell about the school? Tough one.
So, I mean, I can only guess here. I don't know why Ross has said, but I think it's Ross doesn't want you to give bullshit. That's a simple answer. I mean, I personally think writing a shorter essay is very, very difficult, because you need to really condense, think hard, and condense your ideas into a short, powerful, impactful essay, right? So I think what Ross wants you to do is think more, think hard about what you really want to talk about yourself to the people, and show only that.
Awesome. I hope that answers your question, Pankaj. So what he's trying to say is that, and I agree, the shorter the essays are, the tougher they are. I'll give you another example. MIT has only a cover letter, a 250 word or 300 words cover letter. It's way tougher than addressing a lot of other programs where you have 4 essays or 3 essays with 5 to 700 words each. The shorter they are, the tougher they are. Next question we have from Aman. Aman says, how do you see moving to the US in a current wobbly market? Yes. How would the top MBA programs offer international security, Sriram?
See, it's a tough one, but philosophically speaking, there are no guarantees in life, right? If you want to take the risk, you have to take it. But there are a lot of risk hedging strategies that you can do. One thing I did was when I went to US, I spoke to my company back in India saying, hey, there's a chance I might come back, so please take me. And my manager was open to it. I was lucky. That's one thing you can look at. If not, another way is try to find mentors, which helped me a lot, right? If you find a mentor as soon as you get here, if you know which field you want to go to, find a mentor, have them guide you. Unlike in India, if someone recommends you strongly to a company or to a team, the team is willing to interview you, and also if you do well in the interview, hire you. So that's another way to hedge your risk. There are other things you have no control over. For example, Trump has been talking about canceling H-1B visas and stuff, which you have no control over. But I think that is not true, because America in general depends a lot on the talent. People like us bring in H-1B visas. And if Trump does something, it's really hurting his economy the more than it's hurting us. So I would say just take the risk, find a few ways to mitigate the risks that you take. And the risk depends on each one, right? I can't give you a generic rubric to or strategy to mitigate risk. Find out what is the most risky in your life and try to mitigate that.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other questions? So what next? I have a question. So no. There's another one. Wilson says, I worked with a boutique consulting firm in the past, and right now I work with KPMG. During this transition, I've realized how culture makes an impact on your thinking, actions, etc. Could you elaborate when you say? Could you elaborate more on when you say culture Ross is collaborative? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So what I mean by collaborative is you end up, so most of the assignments we do or most of our deliverables is in terms of a group. We are hardly given individual projects. So when you work as a group, especially like, for example, my group always had people from multiple geographies. That's how Ross sets his group. So we work with the Korean, Indian, German, American, African, right? So Ross deliberately does that. It wants you to work in a group and deliver. So that promotes collaboration. That's one way. And also, I think it's the expectation Ross has from his students. Like Ross, like to get good score, Ross doesn't want you to bring down the other folks. They want you to work together to help the other folks learn. So during my first year when I was struggling, I had a lot of people from MBA second year program help me. So Ross facilitates that, but it also pays the second year people a few bucks an hour to do that. So that's good too. So these are the few ways in which I think the culture is collaborative there, which I loved it.
Yeah. I also wanted to ask you, I've seen that even though Ross is very, very popular for operations, but I think a lot of people end up choosing careers in finance as well. I've seen a lot of people say that it's easier to get an investment banking internship at Ross because it's not everybody at Ross is competing for the boutique or the bulge bracket investment banks as they are in Columbia or Stern. Can you talk more about that? How easy or how tough is that?
I mean, personally, based on how things went, I don't think it's easy to get any job in the US for anyone, especially internationals. You need to do a lot of convincing, a lot of talking. and especially in the finance field, right? Imagine you're working with people's money, and people usually want to invest only if they trust you, and it's very difficult to build that trust in finance. And that's my personal opinion there. Like, even after you get a job in finance, it's tough to work there. You need to put in long hours. So if you're thinking about a career in finance, think hard if that's what you want to do. But if you are ready for it, trust me, the rewards are really amazing in finance. But to express in a nutshell, it's not easy to find a job in any field here if you don't put the right work for it.
What is this about? So I push people a lot towards networking, Srira, right in the very beginning, right? During the applications process. And as I get the process started organically, you have to go out, network with people, talk to them, and not just have random conversations, but actually have conversations that will help you with the essays. Can you talk more about your experiences of networking when you and I were together? What was your rejection rate like? How many people did not respond to your emails? What were your learning curves? How did that go for you?
Yeah. So one thing to remember is that networking doesn't come naturally to a lot of Indians, and I was one of them to whom networking wasn't natural. So it was a practice, and I struggled a lot as a lot of you are doing. But don't worry, it will come. The rejection rate is pretty high, especially if you randomly email someone whom you've never talked to, for whom there is no common friends. Right? I would say 99% of people rejected me. But in that process, I did find that few people who were really invested in my future, who wanted to take the time to talk to me and help me understand a few things. And I'm really grateful for them. So if someone rejects you, don't feel bad, don't feel dejected. Just go and find the right person who's going to help you. That's what's important. I think having a few people who mentor you is more important than talking to 10 people. So find those few people who are willing to help you.
And how did networking help you in the applications process, Srira? Why do you think was important for you back then?
Yeah.
I'm asking this because a lot of people ask me this question, that why am I connecting with people during the MBA process? Why can't I do it later? Why is Jatin pushing us to do this right along with when you're creating the goal strategy? Tell them about it.
Yeah. I think networking is another single important piece. And the reason why I think it's important is because it helps you really understand the culture of the school. Like I keep saying, culture is very, very, very important, guys. Imagine living in a place for 2 years where you absolutely hate what's being done. You don't like your school. Trust me, if that's the kind of environment you are in, you won't be able to find a job as well. So networking, finding out really about the school, talking to other people who went through the experience gives you kind of a great idea on what you can expect. And it's also helping to save yourself from a nightmare, right? So, and one more advantage is if the person you're networking with really likes you, he can recommend you to schools. Like I've done it myself. I personally recommended people I really liked. I worked with earlier to Ross, and that also adds value when you apply to the school. So these are a few things why you need to think hard about networking and start doing it right away.
Now, any last minute advice that you have for these people that will make my job of working with MBA applicants easy? A lot of them come up with very, very genuine questions. A lot of them have tons of concerns. Any last minute advice, and this is my last question for you, any specific piece of advice that you have for these people, like a golden nugget that will help them know that, you know what, why this is worth it?
Yeah, my only advice is think big. Don't limit yourself, right? Most of the times we are our own enemies. Our mind is our own enemies. We think that, hey, we can't do it. Doing an MBA abroad is out of reach. I would say no. Doing an MBA abroad is within reach, and you should definitely do it. And what you gain out of it is a lot more than what if you wouldn't. So an example I can give you is of Jeff Bezos, right? The reason why he started Amazon at 33 was because he didn't want to regret later in life that he didn't take that risk, he didn't take that chance. So I don't want you guys also to regret right? Take the chance, go ahead, apply abroad, come here and join me with other Indians who are here, and you'll definitely feel that you've invested 2 good years in your life, and it's worth it.
Awesome. Thank you. That was my last question for you, Sriram. Thank you so much for joining, and it was a pleasure to have you here. Thank you so much.